This is Senate Bill 412, and what this bill does is it protects children from being sexualized and from obscene materials. And we really always have to ask these two questions. Number one, is there ever a reason to give a child pornography? I think we all know what the answer to that is. And number two, is there ever a reason to have a child sexually perform for an adult? And I think we all know what the right answer to that is. Never. Never. There is a rightful and increasing concern by parents that has encouraged all of us to take action to close huge loopholes that could allow harmful sexual material and sexual performance of a child. Senate Bill 412 clarifies that the only exceptions to our penal code for harmful material and sexual performance of a child are for judicial or law enforcement officers who are protected from prosecution in the performance of their official duties. The affirmative defenses to the crime of sale, distribution, or display of harmful material to minors and sexual performance of a child is overly broad and not sufficient to ensure the protection of our children against growing harm, especially online, imposed through the display of obscene content and sexual performance. When we're legislating, we must always err on the side of protecting our innocent children and never err on the side of predators. A child's innocence should never be taken from them under a guise of educational, scientific, psychiatric, psychological, governmental, or legislative reasons. I'm a dad to 4 little ones and a 3-year-old little girl, and I would do anything to protect them and to protect my daughter as well, as I know we all would our own children. Senator Colcourse talks a lot about that on this floor and in her committee. That is one of our most sacred duties as legislators, is protecting our innocent children from harm. Child pornography, harmful sexual material, sexual performance of a child, those are sick and egregious crimes, and the loopholes now are so big that you can drive a truck through them. And what this bill does is it closes those loopholes and creates a clear and very narrow definition of the affirmative defenses to prosecution for our law enforcement officers and judiciary to be able to do their job. And that is why law enforcement supports this bill. Senate Bill 412 ensures our children are protected from sexualization and harmful materials, and abusers are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. And with that, I yield for questions and move passage to engrossment.
To suspend the regular order of business, but we'll get to engrossment. Senator Gutierrez, what purpose?
Will the senator yield for a few questions?
You yield.
I do.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, so just kind of get some sense of what your bill does here. If a librarian hands out one of these books at the public library or at a bookstore, then the affirmative defense of for educational purposes is stricken in your bill. Is that correct?
Yes, but you still have to meet the elements of the penal code, and those are the material taken as a whole. So taken as a whole is patently offensive, is pornographic or inappropriate, appeals to the pure interests of a child, and number 3 is utterly without redeeming social value. So all of those things have to occur.
So you would agree with me that this doesn't mean, because we have some districts in Texas that have banned books, some school districts, correct?
Some have removed inappropriate books, and Senator Paxton has a great bill on that, Senate Bill 13, thank you. Last session we passed HB 900 on this floor. And what that does is that creates a process to remove these obscene books out of libraries where we are not exposing our children to this obscene and inappropriate content.
What about commercial bookstores?
This applies throughout the penal code, so it's not just our schools, it's all over. This is all over. This is the penal code. This is the penal code.
The public library.
Well, so if you're going to expose a child to pornographic material, if you, as an adult, are leading and causing sexual performance of a child, you're going to be guilty, found guilty. If you're doing all these things you're telling me.
So, but your bill goes on to the penal code section of defining harmful material. And rather than making you sit here and define it for us, I'll just read out and you can acknowledge if these things are correct. Harmful material means material whose dominant theme taken as a whole, correct? Section A appeals to the prurient interest of a minor in sex, nudity, or excretion. B is patently offensive to prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for minors, correct? And is utterly without redeeming social value for minors, correct?
Right.
That's the law.
That's the elements of the crime, yes.
Right. And what your bill does specifically, it eliminates the affirmative defense that would be used by school teachers or librarians or the guy at the bookstore or the gal at the public library. They will no longer have that affirmative defense under your bill, correct?
You only have judicial and law enforcement reasons.
All right.
There's no reason to expose a child to pornography. There's no reason to do that.
I'm going to give you an example. This book right here, it's called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I bought it this morning at the bookstore. If my 16-year-old daughter would have bought it after September 1st of this year, should this bill become law, then that person would be committing a crime, if this indeed was a banned book. This is a story about a child's sexual assault victim who overcomes severe mental illness to find friends at a high school. It has been banned at some schools. Is this harmful material?
That's up for law enforcement. But look, when we're looking at legislation like Senate Bill 13, and there's any question, if something has already been deemed offensive under the legislation that we passed in this chamber that everybody's having to abide by, and then they still show it to a child when they know this, it has been deemed offensive, then yeah, absolutely, this triggers penal code. It does.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Hold on. Did you just say in the very beginning it's up to law enforcement?
The penal code is, of course, enforced.
I see. So we're going to have law enforcement read a bunch of books and tell us which is which.
So law enforcement works with probable cause, as you know, so they have to have probable cause, Senator Gutierrez.
Are we going to...
Which is why law enforcement supports this bill, by the way.
Are we going to tell cops to go start reading books, in particular, The Perks of a Wallflower, and they can decide, they can be the harmful material police, if you will?
No.
No?
No.
Well, then how do we determine what's a crime in this statute?
As with any other crime, Senator Gutierrez.
Have you read this book?
I have not.
Do you know if it's harmful material or it isn't?
You would have to look at the dominant theme taken as a whole.
If I told you
patently offensive.
If I changed if I created a hypothetical and told you that the main character was gay, would that change your opinion?
It depends on the context.
This is a book I picked up this morning called The Kite Runner. It follows Amir. He's a privileged boy in 1970s Afghanistan. And his loyal friends, written by Khalid Husseini. His loyal friend is a Hazara servant. After betraying Hassan during a traumatic event, Amir carries guilt into adulthood. Years later, amid all the turmoil in Afghanistan, Amir returns to rescue Hassan's orphaned son, seeking redemption. We kind of heard that story before in the Bible. Similar stories, right? The novel explores themes of friendship, betrayal, guilt, and the search for forgiveness. Is that harmful material, Senator?
Again, that's up to law enforcement to determine if all the elements are met and there's probable cause.
So it uses some curse words. It references child abuse. Does that change your opinion?
It could be. I have not reviewed it.
You're saying that it is up to police to determine, to sit here and read books and determine if they are indeed of a harmful material, right? What is it? What does the law state? A harmful material.
No,
they get
sir.
to decide.
No, it's probable cause. That's not how the penal code works.
Well, sure it does. I mean, at some point, the penal code says if there's probable cause to determine that someone committed the crime of X, Y, and Z. In this case, let's see, the crime of, I suppose, providing this kind of material to someone. And so simply handing a book to someone at the bookstore, well, that's not probable cause, is it?
If you knew it was harmful, so there's two elements here, that you knew it was harmful and obscene, and that you knew the child was under 18.
I see. So what if I didn't know that I was harmful or obscene? In other words, I'm just the bookstore clerk selling books, and I'm getting paid $8 an hour, and I haven't read the damn books. I just have a job. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say damn. I apologize.
You have to meet that knowledge requirement under 43.24. On 43.25, it's a harsher standard because that is sexual performance of a child, like causing a child to participate in bestiality, in sadomasochism, and sharing that. Is that okay? Is that ever okay?
Well, I don't know. I haven't read the book yet. I guess I need to call the cops and have them read the book.
That's in the penal code now. I'm talking about 43.25.
Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. It's by Mildred Taylor. A young black girl and her family. The Logans are one of these few black families to own their own land. It symbolizes pride and independence throughout the story. Casey witnesses racism, injustice, and violence in her segregated community. Is this harmful material? This book has been banned in some school districts. It's on one of your lists.
It depends if it meets the elements of 43.24, Senator.
Okay, so we're talking about two different things. In other words, when you ban books in the community, that doesn't mean necessarily that they're harmful material.
It doesn't always mean when a book is taken out of a public school library, a city library, a county library, they may not be triggering 43.24, obscene, harmful material, certainly not sexual performance of a child all of the time. There could be other reasons why those books are removed. However, if they have been deemed obscene already, to me that proves a pretty good case if someone knows that that book is obscene and chooses to show it to someone that they know is under 18. So that, yes, that would trigger 43.24.
So if the book in County XYZ, I don't want to put this on any of our counties, or in school district, wherever, says this is a banned book, then that means it's obscene?
Not necessarily.
I got you.
But it would be a start for probable cause if they said it already is obscene through the process that we have determined in this legislature for that.
Well, I'll tell you that this book, like I said earlier, mentions racism, injustice, and violence. Now, you wouldn't ban Huckleberry Finn, would you? Would that be a harmful material?
No, because the dominant theme, taken as a whole, is certainly not that.
All right, we'll talk about that in a minute. Oryx and Crake is a dystopian novel set in the future where genetic engineering and corporate greed have run rampant. We're almost there. The story follows Snowman, seemingly the last human survivor after a man-made plague wipes out most of humanity. Is this harmful material?
I don't know the contents of that book. There are a lot of books on your desk.
If I told you that there was a graphic scene that had sex in it, would that change your opinion?
So if the dominant theme, taken as a whole, appeals to the purient interest of a child, so it's pornographic, sexualized, is patently offensive to the norms of society prevailing at the time and our standards now, and is without any redeeming social value. That's a pretty tough test to meet, Senator.
Would you ban, many members on this floor have read Beloved by Toni Morrison, I bet. Would you ban Beloved?
I'm not familiar with the book, Senator.
All right. This is a book called The Bluest Eye. And it tells the story of Piccola Breedlove, and she's a young African-American girl growing up in 1940s Ohio. Piccola struggles with intense feelings of self-loathing and internalized racism, believing if she had blue eyes, she would be loved and accepted in society that prizes whiteness. This is truly a beautiful story, yet it has also been banned in certain districts. Is this harmful material?
That is up for our law enforcement officials to determine.
Senator Gutierrez?
Yes, sir.
You have all the time, of course, you want to take on the floor, but if you go by book by book by book by book that he has not read and ask him his opinion, that is not the best use of time on the floor.
That's fair. Thank you, Mr. President. We're just about done here in a second. Would you ban crime and punishment?
Again, it depends on the context as a whole and the dominant theme.
Right.
This is one that should be, though, right here, if you'd like to read this. I have a
You ban Lolita?
Let's talk about it.
Would you ban Lolita?
I don't recall reading that book, and I'm not in law enforcement.
You never read Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Okay. Well, Senator, I think that part of the problem here is that you talk about probable cause as part and parcel of how you arrest somebody, and I'll submit to you that that is correct. You need to have probable cause. But part of the problem with not just your amendment to this law, but the law itself, is that it creates content police. And then we're left with police officers trying to decipher what is the content of these types of books. And so for that reason, I'll be voting no. But I know that we'll also have another bill that's similar on this where we'll talk more on these issues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Johnson, what purpose?
Questions of the author?
Do you yield?
I do yield. Thank you.
You're recognized.
President.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. I notice on the analysis here that in fiscal 2024, there were 300 arrests, 52 referrals, 15 placements into community supervision, 31 entry. So basically, we've been busting people who've been committing crimes that are created under this statute, right?
Right. There are already arrests under the way it is now. Today.
And that's a great thing. Did any of them use the affirmative defense that you've stricken in this bill?
We did not break that down, no.
Okay, so as far as you know, no one has ever used this affirmative defense, correct?
Well, let me say it this way. You think it's okay, and
I actually just wanted an answer to my question.
The right number of times that a child should be shown pornography is 0, okay?
Agreed.
0.
Agreed. Now, but you do have an exception here for law enforcement, right?
There is an exception for law enforcement and our judicial system as well on the performance of their official duties only.
And you would trust a court to ascertain whether or not law enforcement is justifiably invoking this affirmative defense, because that's how our system of justice works, right?
As the evidence is, of course, entered into the court record.
Right. Law enforcement might have been breaking the law, or they might have been acting in the capacity of their official duties, right?
And of course, that's up to our judicial system where
exactly
beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thank you. Why wouldn't you trust the judicial system to administer the affirmative defense in all these other cases, just in case there is an instance, whereas with law enforcement, the activity, the action of the accused in the eyes of the court and the jury is legitimate? I don't know what it would be. I'm as offended as you are at the behavior that's prescribed by this statute, but I think that in the interests of limited government and respect for separation of powers, the authority to make this determination belongs with the judicial system, not the legislative branch. Do you disagree?
Well, it's already with the judicial system because that's where these charges are tried. You know, when people are charged with this under 43.24 and 25.
But you agree that you have eliminated the judicial system's ability to ascertain whether or not there's a valid affirmative defense for anyone other than law enforcement, even though there's apparently no threat that this affirmative defense has been abused, because so far as we know, it's never even been used.
We are setting a strong public policy today, and you may obviously disagree with the merits of this, but that there's never a time where it's okay to show these obscene pornographic materials to children, and it's never okay for adult to induce a child in sexual performance of a child, maybe even share that in a video. That's never
apparently,
it's
except
never
for
okay.
I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to cut you off. Apparently, except for the exceptions that you've permitted to stay in the statute, right?
Correct, and that was an ask from law enforcement where they run stings, for example, and as we know and as we've seen here in Travis County, like in the 2020 riots right on South Congress, officers were prosecuted and rioters were not. So 20 years ago, maybe that wouldn't have had to be in there. But you know what? I think it has to be here today because of rogue prosecutors and DAs.
And I agree with you, to have law enforcement as an affirmative defense, absolutely. And I don't think I'm quite certain that no one in this chamber disagrees with the premise of the law as it stands. But I think we do have great concern about kind of expanding the role of the legislature into the realm of the courts to prejudge situations that we don't know anything about. And so, thank you for entertaining my questions. I don't think I'll change your mind. Otherwise, I'd offer an amendment to restore the statute to what it was.
Oh, thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Menendez, what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. President. Questions of the author?
Do you yield?
I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Milton, not to belabor the point, I've heard your bill layout, and obviously I don't think you'll find anybody on this floor that agrees or believes that it's ever okay to expose any child to obscene materials or pornography or anything to that extent. The concern that I think I've been hearing, and I wonder if you don't share, is that what about the possibility if there is a class, and we've already passed things where parents must sign consent for students to be taught age-appropriate materials about their health or their bodies and stuff. What if there's a class? Does this bill not then take away the affirmative defense from that teacher at that point? Because, I mean, that's the concern that a lot of us have, that you're going to have a chilling effect on librarians and teachers who may just be carrying out their duties. So what is your
right.
question?
So no, it would not. I think you're kind of referring to anatomy and things such as that in our public schools, and those are part of our TEKS right now. So our State Board of Education has adopted those. Clearly those are with redeeming social value, because obviously that last element is utterly without redeeming social value, and clearly our elected State Board of Education has this curriculum, and instructional materials on things like anatomy. So clearly that the dominant theme taken as a whole would certainly not trigger this.
So you're telling me that the judge of what has redeeming social value will be the State Board of Education?
No, I'm just saying that would not trigger this bill. That would not trigger the penal code.
In your response, I think you said that the State Board of Education has already mentioned or allowed what's in the TEKS. And so I guess the question is, one of the concerns that I have is that whether it's law enforcement, State Board of Education, there's going to be some sort of some subjective third party that gets to determine what has social redeeming value. And I'm with you 100%. When you mentioned your children, we've raised 3 children. Now we're on our 4-year-old granddaughter, and so I would do whatever it took to protect her. And so I'm with you on the intent of the legislation. I'm just concerned that we may be stepping too far. So, but thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Senator Menendez.
The motion is on suspending the regular order of business. The Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell, Campbell, Cook.
21 ayes, 9 nays, rule suspended. Chair lays out on second reading. Committee substitute for 412. Secretary, read the caption.
Committee substitute Senate Bill 412 relating to defenses to prosecution for certain offenses involving material or conduct that is obscene or otherwise harmful to children.
You recognize passage to engrossment.
So moved, Mr. President.
Secretary will call the roll.
Alvarado, Betancourt, Birdwell.
21 ayes and 9 nays. The bill passed to engrossment. Will hold there. Members, for anyone who wishes, I have a book here that's been in my office for several years. It was the novel of the year for 12-year-olds. And my estimation is, for all the no voters, if you read this, you may switch your vote. Even if you didn't, I don't think you'd ever share it with anyone. If I were to hand this was in a library, school library, in a public library. If I were to hand this out in the gallery right now, they would all want to throw all of us out for office for allowing this. So anyone who has, I've never passed it out to anyone because it's so offensive, I would not want to give it to any woman or man on the floor. But anyone who wants to see what's really going on before you cast your final vote, you can get one in my office. And I don't think you'll show it at the town hall meeting. Senator Perry, you're recognized as SJR 18. Spend the